Let's talk about Trump. So Trump today had his arraignment hearing. He pled not guilty to not one, not two, not three, but 34 felony charges. That's right, felony charges. Now, there was a lot of technicality around it, and there's a lot of actual great commentators that have actually done some really good research on this. Actually, what we mentioned him last week, I mentioned him again last week, was it a couple of weeks ago? Stephen Crowder. Let me encourage you, go and check out his coverage. He's very big on the facts and shows you where what all the facts are and everything about that. So I think he did a really good job of covering this. But we want to kind of approach this from a leadership perspective, not really talk about it itself, because we're not lawyers. We don't know really what's going on. And I mean, we even tried to watch Trump's announcement, or what his I suppose response, and I couldn't even get it. Unfortunately, Rumble had crashed. Poor Rumble. They're a great conservative. Actually, a non. They call themselves a non-biased platform, and they're really making some grounds now, which is great. But unfortunately, their servers couldn't handle the Trump influence, I suppose you could say. But I suppose let's take a look back. Today's theme, I really want to talk about leaders standing united, because I believe that God has called us to be united. God has called us to link arms with each other. You know, iron sharpens iron. We are better together. We aren't created to be silos. We are created to do life together. You know, looking at the discipleship model, we're better together. You know, so everything's united. So I really kind of want to theme today around how the power of leaders that stand united. Before we get into that, Dr. Rod, though, do you want to share maybe a little bit of your take on, before we get into like that leadership aspect, a little bit of your take on this whole thing with Trump and the arraignment? I know we spoke about it a few weeks ago, but you know, more has come to light now, and this 34 felony charges for an accounting entry. What's your take on all this?
Well, I did actually read the 34 charges, and they are, to say the least, quite unusual. Of course, I'm not a lawyer, but my goodness me, the whole thing rests on a fairly novel, technical way of interpreting the law. And I guess it remains to be seen how the legal experts actually tackle that. But it does seem, at the very least, to be novel. And obviously, it's been motivated by political considerations. I think that is very, very plain.
Yeah.
And it's a unique feature of the American system, of course, where so many law officers are actually elected.
Yeah.
And
look, Dr. Ross, it seems like both you and I have frogs in our throat tonight.
Yeah, I suddenly developed a frog. Don't know how that happened. But maybe nobody wants us to talk about this issue. It'll be very interesting to see how things actually pan out. I understand that President Trump's lawyers have sought to move the actual hearing to Staten Island out of New York City itself, obviously on the grounds that it's very unlikely that it would be possible to choose 12 unbiased jurors from within New York City. I mean, I think it's going to be very difficult for any president to get a fair trial, because they're so publicly known, and most people are going to have an opinion about them. So that's one difficulty in any case. But
especially such a polarizing one like
absolutely,
President Trump.
Absolutely. Look, my own view, I don't like much of his style, of course, but he did a lot of pretty good work when he was president. That's undeniable, and most of his critics will actually recognise that as well. Of course, his big crime was that he was a president who was not elected from the political elite. That's really, I think, what sparked all this off. And you know, he probably cut a few corners. There's no doubt about that.
Just a few.
And and look, many of us wouldn't support him on many of the shall we say his slip ups morally, but that's not what is at issue here.
Yeah.
And of course, he hasn't been charged in connection with any moral failings.
Yeah.
But what he's been charged with, effectively, what they are trying to do is argue that there were accounting practices within his many business organisations that could be interpreted as deliberately trying to get around federal laws concerning the election. That's what
Yeah.
the case amounts to. It's
And
convoluted.
apparently they're all like there's a confusing thing of like their state laws, but because their state, like the laws that were broken were state-based laws, but
That's correct.
because it was
Yeah.
aligned with a campaign, that then makes it, rather than just being a petty crime, is it? No, whatever it is, it's now a felony.
They call it a misdemeanor.
A misdemeanor, that's
if
right.
you like,
yeah.
the minor things that you can't go to
Yeah.
jail for, essentially misdemeanors.
Yeah.
But it's been elevated to a felony. And so what they're trying to do, the overall allegation, of course, is that the way in which these payments were accounted for actually amounted to trying to hide election funding from the authorities. It's a fairly long bow to draw. There's no doubt about that. And by the way, the $130,000 in hush money that was paid has been ordered to be repaid because the person to whom it was paid didn't stand by their agreement.
Yes.
That's one of the ironies. One of the little things going on the side here. There was another court case. And so it's a weird situation. But I do fear for America. I think that, look, I understand that the Republic was based, the idea of the Republic with so many positions elected, it's this idea of pushing representative democracy as deep down through the administrative mechanisms in society as possible. It's a really laudable goal. And it was actually based on the advice that Jethro gave to Moses about appointing people you can trust, people of good standing, to administer certain numbers of people, so tens and 50s and hundreds and so on.
Yeah.
So the general principle behind it is a good, strong biblical principle. But of course, it actually depends upon people of goodwill being appointed through electoral processes to those positions. And of course, we know that this particular district attorney was, or part of his platform during his own election process was that he was going to get the former president of the United States.
Yeah.
I think that's a very sad thing because it was to make this going after Donald Trump a political issue, I think is wrong. And it really, I think it undermines the whole Republic experiment. And as other commentators have said, watch out, Biden family, watch out, Clinton family, and there will be a few others as well. So
that's obviously the challenge is the fact that there's been all this stuff about Hunter Biden's laptop and him snorting cottage cheese off of all of his very illegal and public that he recorded like illegal activity. He gets away with it, and yet Hillary Clinton got away with accidentally deleting a whole bunch of files. Oh, that was an accounting, that was a admin error, and all this stuff. And then Trump does an accounting error, and then all of a sudden it's a dragged over the coals and this whole thing. But let's get into the leadership side of it. So how can we that's it. It's always good to understand a little bit about, and obviously we don't know everything. It's all kind of like hearsay and kind of all what's being reported at this stage. And he pleaded not guilty to it. And so you mentioned earlier about, like he got great results, but like I don't agree with everything he does, and this is just like an issue, but like it's not a moral issue, and it's not how do we as leaders on this theme of standing united? I started this off by saying we are better together. I hate it. Actually, we see it even on our videos. We don't get that many views. Not yet. Maybe, hopefully, maybe you can help us get more views by sharing and liking and subscribing and doing all that awesome stuff. But um, but even in our comments of us just looking at situations and then talking about it from a leadership perspective of what we know, the amount of hate that we get in comments and people that are like Christians that are attacking us because of one word that we said or something like that, like stop, like we shouldn't be fighting, we should stand united, right? How do we stand united with someone? And I don't mean supporting Trump, because I know people are going to be like, "Oh, are we? How do we vote for Trump?" Or no, I'm not talking about that. We all know in our life, like our senior pastor might be operating and like getting good results, but kind of doing some things that aren't quite, maybe won't be sleeping and paying off porn stars, but I mean, we have heard those sorts of stories from churches, unfortunately. But how do we still stand united when it's not quite so good? I don't know how to say that, because like when Trump, his practices aren't all that great. Like he's polarizing. He gets great results, but like, is he like? Then he has all these sexual assault claims against him and all this sort of stuff, and paying off a porn star and all that, like all that sort of stuff. It's like, oh, really? But then he's the most popular. Evangelicals love him in America, and I had someone ask me at the gym today, like, they love him. Like, how do you, with all that stuff, how do you still support him? What advice have you got for people that are leaders, that maybe their senior leader, someone above them, isn't quite, let's say, up to standard? Like, how do we stay united?
First principles, always go to first principles.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, you can't excuse immoral behaviour in the church. If you're talking about senior church leaders, you can't excuse that, and
Yeah.
they cannot remain in a senior leadership position. But it's always got to be argued, I think, on first principles. And for us, of course, the Bible, the Word of God, is the final arbiter on all matters concerning Christian belief and practice, if you like, both our theory and our practice. And so we need to form an opinion based on first principles that we derive directly from the Word of God. Now, somebody like President Trump could never or should never hold a leadership position in a church, right? Although, look, to be fair, there hasn't been very much proven in a court of law. There have been lots of allegations, and but also, I mean, there are comments that he's made that are publicly available that I think would make him ineligible for a leadership role in a church.
Yeah.
In the case of his arrest and so on, for me, that the first principle is this: regardless of who is involved, we're actually seeing the legal system being used as a political weapon, and that is a bad thing. That is a bad thing. So regardless
so
of
that's the thing. Like, how do you stand united with someone that let's say Trump is guilty as sin, right? Let's say that he's done all of these things and more, and it all comes out, and like how do you stand with someone that, I mean, even if he has done these things, the approach has been wrong. He has been wronged legally. Like it's unjust the way that he's been attacked and everything like that.
Well, let's sort
how
it
do you
out
still stand with
politically.
someone
It's
like
a
that?
political issue. They want to sort out a political issue, sort it out at the ballot box. That's where you
Yeah.
sort out political issues.
Okay. Yeah.
You don't decide we're going to make it impossible for somebody to run. Now, I don't know whether, look, we must assume we're not dealing with stupid people. There's a strategy here. There's a well-planned strategy.
Yeah.
So we're not dealing with people who have lost their marbles or anything like that. So there is a strategy there.
I mean,
Ultimately, I think there
Joe
is.
Biden.
They're not silly
Like-
people. They're not, just because
No.
somebody's a Democrat doesn't make them stupid or senile.
No.
And by the way, I mean, I don't buy all this stuff that Joe Biden is senile. I know a lot of commentators. I don't think he is. I think he's a whole lot smarter than we give him credit for.
Yeah.
He knows
probably.
what he's doing.
Yeah.
And he's being advised by people, and he goes along with that advice.
Mm.
But one of the things I think they've decided to do is, one, they don't like the fact that somebody was elected president of the United States and they weren't from the political elite on either side, right?
Mm.
So if a different person from the Republican Party had been elected, we wouldn't have had all of this hoo-ha. The biggest issue politically is that he wasn't from the right tribe.
Yeah.
On either side. That's my view, and from down under here in Australia. And so that the biggest crime he ever committed was that he was a jolly businessman who decided he'd take a tilt at becoming president, and that's really what people have got against him.
Yeah.
But when you say we're united we stand, I think what we unite around is principle, not necessarily an individual. So I don't see a lot of purpose in uniting around President Trump.
Mm-hmm.
But I do see a lot of purpose in uniting around the principle that it is wrong to use the legal process as a political bludgeon.
That's good.
Right place to deal with political issues is at the ballot box, and that's what should happen.
That's really good. And like bringing this back into, I feel bad, just referring to the church about this, but it's kind of like the most common story we hear is people suffering under poor leadership in a local church, and it's usually those leaders are actually great leaders. They really are. They just have some faults. What we call poor leadership. It's the behavior. It's not the person. And I think that, like with what you're saying, to like interpret it back into those is, we all have those experiences, whether it's in a church or in a business or whatever, that the leader may not be doing things exactly how we expect or we like or whatever. But if we're driving towards that same principle with what you're saying is like, we want to provide a better service in this particular industry to our customers, you can unite on that. In the church is like, we're wanting to, I mean, even just the most basic one, we're just wanting to bring Jesus to our local area. You can unite around that, but usually most local churches most pastors have a vision that's a little bit more succinct than that and a little bit bigger. And I'm sure we can unite it around that. Like Dr. Rod is my pastor, even though we're on opposite sides of the planet. And I mean, he pastors me better than probably I think that most people are pastored in this world. I'm blessed to have him as my pastor. But it's because we actually stand united on business. You are the business pastor. You understand how important it is for business in the kingdom, plus also how important business is in the community. And you and I are united on that. We may not agree on everything, but we can stand united on that principle. And so I actually love that, Dr. Rod. So as a bit of a lesson, if you feel challenged by the person who is leading you and you're in a leadership around and maybe you don't see eye to eye on everything, like Dr. Rod said, find a key principle. Find the principle that you guys are driving for, that you can stand united on that principle, because then we can stand together and stand united, and we are stronger together.
But of course, the other thing that we need to keep in mind is, as leaders, we should always be doing the best we can to discover what our own negatives are and work on them. because there's no excuse for
100%.
poor leadership either. And
No.
poor leadership damages people, and ultimately
Yep.
it will impinge upon our capacity to actually fulfill our vision. So while it is important for us to unite around the vision, the ideas, and obviously as Christians, we're all united around Jesus Christ, the central figure in our faith, that can never be used as an excuse for poor leadership. Never.
Yes.
And as
Yes.
leaders, our attitude should be, I am going to grow, I'm going to
Yep.
receive feedback, and I'm going to ask for input, and, I'm going to allow the Holy Spirit and wise people to lead me to become a much better leader. So regardless of what anybody might say about the power of unity, there is never an excuse for poor leadership.
Hey, that was an excerpt from our On the Cube Leadership podcast. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, put a comment below. And if you want to see more content like this, faith-based leadership development content, make sure you check out our channel, give it a subscribe, and hit the bell notification so that you'll be notified when we release new content.